Alright, hey guys, welcome to the video. If you're new here, my name's Curtis, and this summer heat is really starting to kick off. As you guys know, I live here in Japan, so that humidity is really starting to come in strong. So I thought it was a really good time to put together a list of fragrances that feature the note of bergamot. And I really love the note of bergamot because it's not as sweet as an orange is, and it's not as astringent as a lemon is when it's used in fragrance, and it has a very nice kind of slightly green floral tinge to it. But yeah, it is just such a gorgeous note to wear in the summertime, and it works perfectly in those hot and humid temperatures. So I've gone through my fragrance collection, I've put together a list of fragrances that contain the note of bergamot. So if you're curious to hear my thoughts and opinions on these fragrances, then let's go. All right, first up from the house of Xerjoff, we have Neo. Man, so this has to be one of my favorite, if not my favorite fragrance from the house of Xerjoff. This is a neroli bomb that features quite a heavy dose of bergamot, but bergamot and neroli go perfectly together. Kind of like I said, bergamot has those kind of floral nuances to it, and so that's why it blends perfectly with neroli. But man, this basically feels like a fresh bar of Irish spring soap. It just makes you feel so just invigorating and refreshing. And yeah, I absolutely love the smell of this one. My image of this is if you're up in the mountains, and the mountains are kind of snow-capped in a way, but it's hot outside, and you're under a waterfall, and you're just kind of lathering yourself up with fresh Irish spring soap. And what's kind of outside of that area is just kind of very green, fresh grass, because there are kind of green nuances to this fragrance. There is some petitgrain in here, which is contributing to that greenness here. But man, this is such a refreshing fragrance that I absolutely love to wear in the high heat, and it works perfectly in the heat of summer here in Japan. Like I said, it's very humid here, but this fragrance just cuts through and makes you feel just clean and refreshed when you're feeling sticky and wet from that humidity. This fragrance helps to mitigate that feeling, and that's why I absolutely love wearing it. But yeah, this is one of my favorites from the house of Xerjoff, and it's definitely one to check out. So if you can, get yourself a sample of Neo by Xerjoff. Next up from the house of Labo, we have Bergamotte 22. Yeah, so this fragrance features bergamot quite heavily, and it's combined with some other citrus notes like grapefruit, but it's a very nice balance between the two. You also have petitgrain in here as well, which is kind of contributing to a slightly green undertone with a bit of vetiver to give it some legs, but it is also like that petitgrain, giving it a slightly green push. But this fragrance is very fresh, it's juicy, it's quite plump. And yeah, the bergamot is kind of the main star of this fragrance, hence the name. But man, this is such a gorgeous wear. And I think in terms of if you were looking at bergamot forward kind of dominant fragrances, this would probably be my favorite of any of those fragrances. But yeah, this is such a gorgeous wear. And one thing about Labo fragrances, you'll find a lot of times that it contains this kind of musk in the base. So when this fragrance starts to dry down, you definitely get a bit of musk that starts to push forward, but it's blending together nicely with those citrus and green nuances that you find in here. But this is such a beautiful wear, and I think today it might actually be my scent of the day. I don't know, I'll wait and see. It is quite hot outside, so I feel like this fragrance is gonna go over extremely well. But yeah, this is a beautiful one and definitely one to check out. So if you can, get yourself a sample of Bergamotte 22 by Labo. Next up, from the house of Nishane, we have Ambra, Calabria. Man, so this one is a masterpiece in my opinion, and it is my favorite from the house of Nishane. I mean, hence the dent. I've definitely put quite a nice dent in this fragrance because, you do get a very nice balance of citruses. Bergamot is in here, and, it is that combination of citruses, some green notes, and some very light kind of ambery and vanillic notes that you get in here. And this fragrance will take you on a journey. Upon initial spray, you're getting a very heavy blast of citruses and green notes. And then when you start to push into the dry down, you do kind of a 180 flip. And that's when you get those very light, kind of summery, ambery, and vanillic notes that push forward. And, you know, I've said this on the channel many times, this is a type of amber kind of vanillic style of fragrance that you can wear in the summertime. And that's saying a lot, you know, for me, considering that I live here in Japan and it is extremely humid here. So typically those fragrances don't work well here in the summer, at least for me personally. But this is a fragrance that I can wear in the summertime. Those kind of ambery notes are very light and airy, and combined with those kind of green and citrus touches that you get here, just makes for an absolutely gorgeous wear. And it doesn't come off like cloying at all. It just comes off kind of refreshing, but has that slight sweetness to it that is just gorgeous. But this is a beautiful one and definitely one to check out. So if you can, get yourself a sample of Ambra Calabria by Nishane. Next up, from the house of Ormond Jayne, we have Montabaco Verano. Man, talk about summer elegance in a bottle. That's what you get right here. I think Ormond Jayne as a house in general is just a very elegant and almost kind of posh house. Like, they just do fragrances really well. You won't really find fragrances that are like beast mode fragrances, or, you know, which is good, especially for the summertime. You know, I don't necessarily want to be shoving my fragrance in somebody's face, but this is a very elegant wear. I would say moderate sillage, moderate projection. You do get a nice blast of citruses and bergamot, especially in here, and that's combined with a very light and airy kind of tobacco note. And what's very unique about this fragrance is it contains the note of kind of air almost. So I don't have another fragrance that contains that specific note. So yeah, it makes it quite unique to my collection, but I love the bottle design here. But I wouldn't necessarily say that this is a blue fragrance or anything like that. And I guess looking at the bottle, you might think that this fragrance is going to push in that direction, but it's not a blue fragrance, but it is quite a citrusy smelling fragrance, and that kind of very light and airy tobacco note that you get in here just makes for a very nice combination. But I love the house of Ormond Jayne, and it's a house that I really want to dive into a bit deeper, because I do feel like they produce very high quality fragrances that I think, you know, are unique, and I think that speak to me personally, especially living here in Japan. I feel like Ormond Jayne fragrances will work very well in this type of aesthetic and the way that Japanese think about fragrances. But this is a lovely one and definitely one to check out. So if you can, get yourself a sample of Montabaco Verano by Ormond Jayne. And finally, from the house of Perris Monte Carlo, we have Rose de Taif Extrait. Man, so you guys know I talk about this one so much on the channel because it's just my favorite rose fragrance that I have in my collection. The Extrait version. So if Perris Monte Carlo, they have I think it's an Eau de Parfum version, and they have an Extrait version. If you're looking to sample this fragrance, sample the Extrait. This one is just very dense and oily and thick, a very nice citrusy, jammy rose. So upon initial spray, you get a very heavy blast of lemon and bergamot, and that's just combined with some Taif rose in here. And there is also another kind of rose, I think it's damask rose, but Taif rose is, I think, is a bit more dominant than the damask rose, hence the name. But basically my image of this is if I'm laying in a bathtub full of Taif roses and someone cuts open a lemon, sprinkles in a bit of bergamot, and I'm just soaking in that. That's basically what I get here. But yeah, this is such a lovely, citrusy, rosy fragrance. And this one comes alive in the heat, I'm telling you. It's not cloying, but it is quite thick, but it leaves such a sexy sillage trail. And man, hands down, just a gorgeous smell here. But I think Perris Monte Carlo in general is a very underrated house, and the way that they do citrus is just top of the line. I feel like, in my humble opinion, I feel like when it comes to citrus-based fragrances, hands down, they're the best. and they have a really lovely line of citrus-based fragrances, and I think it's like their summer lineup. You should definitely check them out if you're looking for a lovely citrus fragrance. I'll try to put a video about that specific line in the future, but yeah, man, they do citruses right, and you can definitely tell in this fragrance here. But yeah, this is hands down my favorite rose fragrance. That's why I talk about it all the time. But yeah, it's just such a beautiful combination of citrus and rose. Gorgeous. So if you can, get yourself a sample of Rose de Taif Extrait by Perris, Monte Carlo. All right, guys, so that's all I have for you for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed today's content, and let me know down in the comment section, what are some of your favorite fragrances that contain the note of bergamot? I'd love to hear them. Well, I hope you guys are staying healthy and well, and I'll see you in the next video.